Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, May 9th. A little over 300 albums coming out this week. I got 12 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's a little over 300 albums coming out this week, but I'm only going to talk about 12 of them on the show today. So if something you're looking forward to that I'll have on here, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing. And like always, if you're unable to find these in your local brick-and-mortar stores, they should all be available online. I'll put links down below in the comment section for them. You can also always go over to the Vinyl Den store on Amazon. I got all the pre-orders on there. There's new releases. There's deals on records. All sorts of cool stuff to check out. First album I got on the list for this week is the new one from Counting Crows. This is Butter Miracle, The Complete Suites. It's their 8th studio album. There's a black version of this. There's also a pink, purple, and blue version. It's going to run you about $28. So the band released the first part of this album back in 2021. It was met with a lot of really positive reviews. The single Elevator Boots hit number 2 on the, I think it was like the adult alternative airplay Billboard list here in the US. So the single did really well, and that first EP had 4 songs on it. This the Complete Suites has those 4 songs plus the 5 additional new songs. I streamed that first album a couple of times. I decided to hold off on buying a physical copy of it because I figured if and when the band ever released the second half of it, I figured there'd be a full version of it. So, I'm glad I held off on getting that because I'll just grab a copy of it this week. But this album is the band's 3rd full album of new music in 17 years. And I think the lack of consistent output from the band, I think in some ways has hurt Counting Crows. I wasn't a huge fan of their last couple of albums. I think there's a couple of really good tracks on Butter Miracle Suite 1, but the couple of albums they released before that I wasn't a huge fan of, but it's definitely one I'll stream and check out. I'll probably will grab a copy of that this week also. And then you've got the Weeknd, Hurry Up Tomorrow. This is the complete edition. This is something I've complained about a lot lately is bands and artists doing these deluxe editions. Now, a lot of times an artist will release, 8 to 12 months after the first album came out, but this one came out shortly after the album was released back in January. And Hurry Up Tomorrow is the last album in a trilogy of releases. Started with After Hours back in 2020, then Dawn FM in 2022, and then this album kind of rounds out that trilogy. It's going to be on 2 LPs. That's going to run you about $46. So when this album first came out, there was 11 tracks on that standard release that came out. And then shortly after that album was released, there was an additional 11 songs that were released also. At first, they were only available as digital only tracks, and then this week, of course, you're getting the whole album on vinyl. I like what I've heard off of the album so far. I haven't sat down and listened to the entire album yet. My thing is with these deluxe editions, if especially something like this where this was released, I think like a week or 2 after the first album came out. It's like a really short period of time. If you're going to release this deluxe edition, just release the entire album all at once. Because most of the time like this, it just comes off as just a cash grab because people went out there and bought that album when it first came out. And then, now they've got to go out and buy, the entire album all over again just to have those extra tracks, unless they just want to hold off and just listen to it on streaming services. We've also got the new album from Arcadia Fire coming out. This is Pink Elephant. It's their 7th studio album. It's going to run you about $39. So this is the follow-up to the band's 2022 album, We, which snapped the band's streak of 3 straight albums, reaching number 1 on the Billboard 200. But, it still did really well. It's still at number 6, so I wouldn't consider it like any kind of failure. But if you're unfamiliar with Arcade Fire, they're a Canadian rock band. They've released 6 albums since 2004, and their last album, We, it didn't make my top 10 list for 2022, but it was listed as an honorable mention. They've already released 2 singles off the new album. I'm not a huge fan of either one of them. I think my main issues aren't necessarily with the songs. I think it's a bigger issue with the way they're mixed, but I wasn't a big fan of the first couple of singles off of We either, and I ended up really enjoying that album more so than I thought I was going to. So it's another album where I'll hold off and listen to the entire album once it comes out. I don't want to kind of make any prejudgments of the album without listening to the entire album first. But like I said, I'll definitely stream it this week. Then we've also got Ben Webster and Associates coming out. So this came out back in 1959 as part of the Verve Acoustic Sound series. These are always mastered from the original analog tapes. They're pressed on QRP. The entire process is overseen by Chad Casson from Acoustic Sounds. It's going to run you about $39 online. This album I just recently listened to for the very first time. I was really impressed with it. The whole first half of the album is a great version of In a Mellow Tone by Duke Ellington. The track runs at just a little over 20 minutes, and just that one track by itself I think is enough to have this album. This one I'm definitely going to add to my list to grab this week. It's going to run about $39 online, but he's joined by Coleman Hawkins on here, Bud Johnson, Randy Brown, Roy Eldridge, Joe Jones on here also. It's a great album. If you're looking for some new jazz music to listen to, definitely check this one out. There's also a new album from Sleep Token coming out this week. This is Even in Arcadia. It's their fourth studio album. 2 LP release. It's going to run you about $32. This is the band's follow-up to Take Me Back to Eden, which came out back in 2023. This is also the band's first album since moving over to RCA. If you're unfamiliar with Sleep Token, they're an English metal band. They've really been on the rise over the last few years. Their last album was met with some pretty mixed reviews, but ended up being Spotify's most streamed album of 2023. Ended the year on a lot of best of lists that year also. They're another one of those bands I definitely need to dig into more. I've been trying to get more into metal over the last, probably year and a half. I've only heard a handful of their songs. There's definitely some stuff I like on there, some stuff I don't also. But, I'll definitely stream the new album when it comes out this week. There's also Three Doors Down, Away from the Sun, getting reissued this week. Came out back in 2002. It was their second studio album. It's going to run about $28. For as big and as popular as their debut album was, I think it hit like number 7 on the Billboard 200. It sold over 5 million copies here in the U.S. I think Away from the Sun, overall, even though there's some really great tracks on their debut album, I think overall Away from the Sun is probably a better album. Commercially it didn't do quite as well as their debut. I think like number 8 on the Billboard 200, sold I think about 4 million copies. So I think it was just shy of meeting the expectations that their debut album set. 3 of the singles off this album did chart on the Billboard Hot 100. 2 of them actually reached the top 10. The interesting thing about this album is the band's lead singer actually lists this as the band's best album, and he said it's more so because of the maturity the band showed on Away from the Sun. There's also a reissue of Hey Stoopid by Alice Cooper coming out this week. The album was released back in 1991. It was his 12th solo studio album. It's going to be on magenta vinyl. It's going to run you about $38. So this is going to be limited. So it's only limited to 3,000 copies. So I'm not sure how hard it's going to be to grab a copy of this week. This is the follow-up to Alice's hugely successful album, Trash. It came out in 1989. Commercially didn't do quite as well. Trash hit number 20 on the charts here in the U.S. Hey Stoopid hit number 47, which still, it's still really well. It didn't live up to the expectations that Trash set for it. But there's a great list of guest performances on this album. Slash is on here, Ozzy, Steve Vai, Nikki Sixx, Mick Mars, a bunch of other ones. Feed My Frankenstein, I think, was one of the big tracks on here, along with Hey Stoopid, which both of those songs I think really kind of helped propel this album up the Billboard charts. I don't think it's as good as Trash, but there's definitely some good stuff. It's one I don't have on vinyl. I probably should grab a copy of this week, like I said, depending on how limited it's going to be. You've also got Eric Clapton Unplugged coming out. This was released back in 1992. This is the greatest selling live album of all time. This is an enhanced edition is what they're calling this one. So it's an extended version of the album. It's going to be on 3 LPs. It's going to run you about $60. It's all newly remixed or remastered for this release. So what you're getting on this album that's extra is there's a couple extra tracks on here that weren't included on the original release. And then why they're calling it an enhanced release is because Eric Clapton did an interview before the performance was recorded where he went through and talked about all the different influences on all the different tracks. And that's like woven through the songs or between the songs on this album. I'm somebody that's been highly critical of Eric Clapton over the years. I think he's one of the more overrated musicians out there, but this is a great performance on this one. But $60 is a lot. Hopefully it's available on streaming. I'll be able to stream it and check it out. There's also a new album from a band that I feel has really flown under the radar over the last few years. This is Mixed Emotions by Kaleo. So Cleo actually is a Hawaiian term. It means the voice, and you would think, hey, they must be a Hawaiian band. No, they're actually from Iceland. There's also a couple of different versions of this album that's coming out this week. There's a clear and blue version, and there's also a black and blue version. I think both of them are going to run you about $28. The band really caught the attention of the mainstream, at least here in the U.S., back in 2016 when they released their sophomore album, A.B. It reached number 16 on the Billboard charts, sold over 1 million copies, which, off of their debut album, which didn't chart at all here in the U.S. It's definitely a big improvement. And then their third album, Surface Sounds, didn't do quite as well, but it still hit like number 102 or 103 on the Billboard charts. So the new album has 10 songs. And of course, they've already released 5 of the songs as singles before the album came out. So I've already listened to a big chunk of the album. I mean, I like what I've heard so far. I don't think it's as good as AB, but I'm definitely liking the album. I'll definitely sit down this weekend and listen to the whole thing. And then the next album you got is George Harrison, Darkhorse. Came out back in '74. It was his fifth studio album. It's going to run you about $35. This is the first of 3 albums that's coming out from George this week. Darkhorse is an album that marked kind of a pivotal point in not only his career but also in his personal life. It was written right around the same time that he had his separation from his wife Patty. And going through the album, listening to the lyrics or reading the lyrics, it sounds like he used the writing process as almost like a therapy session. But this album was not well received at all. Commercially, it still did really well. Hit number 4 on the charts here in the U.S. But I think this is an album where, looking at it years, several decades on after it was released, I think people look at it more fondly than what it did when it was released. And the next George Harrison album coming out this week is Extra Texture. Came out back in 1975. It was a 6th studio album. It's also going to run you about $35. So this album was released right off of the heels of kind of a disastrous North America tour that he did with Ravi Shankar. It's also George's only album that lacks any kind of spiritual message on here. This is also his second straight album that was not well received. Same with Darkhorse. It still charted really well. This is one I've never listened to. It's definitely one I need to at least stream and check out this week. Then the last album I got on my list is 33 1/3. Came out in '76. It was a 7th studio album. It's also going to run you about $35. So this was George's big return to form album after really 2 kind of letdown albums. I think it's probably his second best album of the '70s, behind All Things Must Pass. It didn't chart as well as either Darkhorse or Extra Texture, even though it outsold both of those albums. And the name of the album is not only a reference to the speed at which records spin, it's also the age at which George Harrison was when he wrote this album. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. I'll probably grab that Counting Crows album. Yeah, I'm not sure if I got a copy of it on pre-order, which I need to go through and double check because I did that with the Ghost album recently, where I went out to the store on Friday and bought a copy of it and completely forgot that I pre-ordered a copy of it. So I don't want to end up with 2 copies of that one, but I'll definitely grab that one. I'll probably grab that Arcade Fire, depending on how I like that album. I might grab that Ben Webster. I might grab that Alice Cooper, but let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.